What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I appreciate you stopping by, spending a few minutes of your time here with me tonight. We're actually going to go over two trades today, a trade that I took and won, and a trade that I lost today. Okay. So you can see we're looking at the DJ 30 here. I took a nice, easy 75 pips in under 10 minutes on this market. Okay. But I also got slapped on a Bitcoin trade, but thankfully, I went into the Bitcoin trade with very small size. And that's just because I don't really trade Bitcoin too often. And it was actually the first pair that traumatized me. Okay. When I first opened, like my very first live account, I threw $100 in the market, put in a position on Bitcoin, and lost $50 in like 7 seconds. Okay. And I've been traumatized ever since. I tend to stay away from Bitcoin. So I went in with really small size. So it didn't affect my account very much. And we still made plenty of money on the day. Okay. Now, here we're looking at a 15-minute chart on the DJ, and I'm just trying to show you the fact that we had these successive days giving higher closes. And then on Friday, our first red day, okay? Friday takes out the high of Thursday and then closes down low, giving us our first red day, signal day. So on Monday, I'm looking for a simple, easy follow through short trade, a continuation of that first red day type of scenario. Okay. So a pump and dump, which is exactly what we got on the DJ 30. I'm also showing you here, right? These levels. This is the low that this market ended up targeting for the day. This was where we pulled back to into these levels from the New York session. Okay. But ultimately failing to get back up to those highs before we coil sideways and dump. All right. Here we're looking at a 5-minute chart just of Monday itself, just so you can see how brilliant this thing sets up. This is a well-engineered chart on the day. You can see that this market is pumping, grinding up through Tokyo, through London, into the New York session. We're at the high of the day, going into those levels from the New York session on Friday, right? Before we melt. And you can see here on this 5-minute chart, when we go up here, we have this pin up here. We're closing beneath that EMA, right? But I didn't try to enter up there, but still, we have these lows as targets, potential targets. This was the actual trade that I took. So you can see I actually waited a little bit longer. Like I said before, I had already gotten into a Bitcoin trade, and then I came and looked at this chart. And you can see I just took a more conservative entry into this market. I waited for this coil dump. All right, we dump down, start putting in lower lows. We pull back into that EMA and start trading lower. And so I got in that market there with the 30 pip stop loss, ended up taking 77 pips in 9.5 minutes. All right, good trade for me, right? I've been telling you guys recently to master taking 50 pips out of the market or 100 pips out of this market. And that's exactly what we did today. Now, here with this slide on this 1-minute chart, I'm showing you this coil at the high of the day, right? And you can see going into that 9:30 timing window, we actually break out of the high of this coil, of this consolidation. That's a false break at the high, okay? We break out of those highs. We have this miniature head and shoulders kind of pattern right here before we again melt beneath that EMA engulf, right? And I waited for this pullback and continuation to get into the market. All right. So we popped the top, went through those highs one last time, working the highs for the dump down. Easy trading today. Okay. On the DJ 30. Now, this is the trade I took on Bitcoin. Okay. It was easy trading on the DJ 30. Another story entirely for me on Bitcoin. Like I said, I went in with a very small lot size. I was planning on averaging into this position. Thank goodness. Okay. But it wasn't that I was wrong per se here. Okay. It's just that I was impatient. I jumped the gun. I thought I saw what I needed to see, right? This market, right, had already started to dump down beneath that EMA, looking real similar to how the DJ 30 was looking. Okay. And then we started to melt. My bad. I don't know what's going on. Okay. And so I just decided to get in as this market was moving lower, and you can see it spiked up through those highs one last time, fell, coiled sideways for just a couple minutes into that EMA before really melting. So, like I said, I wasn't wrong. I was just early. I was impatient. All right. And so that can happen. That's why a lot of the times I like to wait an extra 5 minutes. We feel pressed to get into these trades immediately, as fast as possible, at the high of the day or whatever. But really, what we're doing is when these levels are hit or when we're seeing this pattern, we really want to wait for it to show us what's going on. So this was an example of me sort of just, you know, guessing or being a little overconfident or thinking I needed to get in early. Maybe I was going to, miss a good entry or something. And instead, I got stopped out and the market went in my direction without me. All right. So sometimes patience pays. We don't have to get in right at 9:30 or 9:32. We can wait until 9:45 or a little bit later, just like I did on the DJ 30 trade. And that trade worked out a whole lot smoother for me. All right. And I just felt like this was important to show you, right? We have more time than we usually think we do. We pressure ourselves into these quick entries, all right? But if this market is going to give us a good trade, okay, you could get in on any of these 1 minute candles and make money on the way down, okay? Don't force yourself into an awkward position, all right? If I would have waited 5 or 10 more minutes and saw this type of price action, this spike through the highs, right? Because look, we come and overtake these three bullish candles right here. We come and overtake that. That's an engulfment on a higher time frame. Okay, so if I would have waited and saw that, I could have entered this market right when we broke this last green candle, and we would have been off to the races, bro. Okay, that was a beautiful trade, but I fumbled it. It is what it is. You got to take those losses. It doesn't really affect me too much, okay? Especially seeing as how I took 75, really 77 pips on the DJ 30 with, a lot more size than I was willing to put on this Bitcoin trade. All right. So thank goodness for risk management. But anyway, I hope you continue to free your mind.